Welcome back to our next tutorial using SketchUp. Today we're going to be looking at how to sketch this tray that we use at the Year 8 level at CRC North Keilor. The tray is using the finger joints in the corners that you should have already learnt about in class. Other than that, it's a fairly straightforward product. So we're going to be creating something similar to what we see on the screen now. So let's get stuck into it. As always, we're going to create a new model. Okay, as always, start by getting rid of your little person there and make sure, of course, that you are in fact using millimeters. And again, 0 or 1 decimal place is more than enough for what we're doing here. As we've seen in previous tutorials, there's many ways that you can go about drawing these sorts of models. Again, I'm just going to go with what I think is a fairly straightforward way in this particular case. I'm going to begin by drawing the handle. It's probably the more complicated piece. And my personal preference is usually to draw the piece of wood, so to speak, first of all. So the piece we are doing for the handle is going to be 320 millimeters long by 70 millimeters tall and 12 millimeters thick again. So you can go about drawing that whichever way you like. I'm going to start by drawing the length and width of the piece. So that's going to be 320 long by 12 millimeters. There we go. Let's zoom into it. And as we said before, it is now going to be 70 millimeters in height, just like that. So essentially this gives me a piece very much like the piece of wood I would be collecting and making in class. From here, I want to mark in my finger joints. So if I was doing this in class, I'd have to mark in 12 millimeters from the end, 10 millimeter wide fingers, have to mark them all the way around, of course. Then I'd have all the different cutting techniques I'd need to cut them out. In the virtual world, of course, it's a lot easier. The quickest way I do this is just to use my construction line tool. I'm going to start from the bottom because I know the finger joints start from the bottom. I'm just going to go up in multiples of 10, typing it in to make sure it's correct. And because I'm using construction lines, it goes all the way across, so I don't have to do this on both ends because you can see those lines go all the way through. So I've created those fingers, and I do need to just go the 12 millimeters from the ends though. So I can do that on both, typing it in to make sure it's correct. So you can see I've made little spaces, but unfortunately I can't cut these out because these are just construction lines. So the quickest way for this is to take your rectangle tool, and we're just going to draw rectangles in the parts that we are going to cut out. Now, a little bit of a hint. I prefer to start by cutting out the bottom piece on the handle. I'll explain why in just a second, but once we've decided, we're going to use the intersection lock points to go from the corner there to the corner there. Just draw a little rectangle there, and I'll do this one as well. There's no need to draw these other two in because they're going to be the fingers that stay, making sure that we do the same on the other side so that they're equal. So it's the second from the top and the bottom one. So that's given me a solid shape now, which means I can now take my push-pull tool, and as we've seen before, that's now a separate piece, and I can push that out to essentially get rid of it. And if I just zoom and rotate around to the other side, so I can see it, and do the same on this side. So in essence, I have now created the finger joints. Now, the reason I said I like to start with the finger joint cutouts at the bottom is that means we've kept this top one, and that kind of means we've actually got more space we could work in for our handle shaping. If we cut this one out, then the handle shaping would have to start from up here. But in theory, we could come a little bit further down. So it doesn't actually make the joint any better or worse. It just means we've got a bit more space to work. So I tend to like that. Okay, at this point, I'll rub out those construction lines that I don't need anymore. And those 4 out there as well. All right. So now we need to mark in the handle. Now I'm going to do a very simple handle just to show you. I'd encourage you to be much more creative. But let's start by putting in our constraints. So we know that we need to have a minimum of 15 millimeters from any edge to any other edge. So essentially when we cut out our handle piece for a hand to go in, we have to have a minimum of 15 millimeters at any point. So what I like to do to make sure I don't make a mistake is again take my construction line, and from every edge I'm again going to mark in a line that is 15 millimeters. Just rotate round so I can see it a bit better. So 15 millimeters from there. And I'm going to do it from the edge of the finger joint. So I'm just taking a point here so I can come 15 millimeters from that edge and the same 15 millimeters from here. So if I have a look at that a bit more front on now, you can see I've got this space in here to work in. So how you go about cutting out a shape there, again, that depends on your design, but essentially these areas are now out of bounds because that gives us the space that I need. In my particular case, what I'm going to do is just do a really quick rectangle in here. So from edge to edge there. I'm not going to cut all that out, but that allows me to get a few other points like these midpoints here. So what I'm going to do quickly here is use my arc tool, so this one here, and I'm going to go from center point to there, just give it a nice little curve on the side there, and again from center point across, and I'll do the same on this side. Again, those locking points are always so useful. They just make things a lot easier to find the right spots for a quick and easy curve. So you can see I've now got a shape, and again, I can now, because that's a solid shape, I can use my push-pull tool to essentially push that out and cut it out. So there we go. Rub out your construction lines. Okay, and we've now got our handle. As usual, what we'll do is quickly group that together so we can move it around more easily. Excellent. All right. We don't need to draw it again, of course, because we're going to have a second handle identical. So now what I want to do is do the long pieces. Now these are going to be 40 millimeters high to match up with the joint area here. Still 12 millimeters thick and 500 millimeters or half a meter long. Okay. So I'm going to do it in very much the same way as I just did the handle piece. I'm going to start by sort of drawing the rough length of it. So here we're going to have the 12 millimeter measurement and then the 500 millimeter measurement. So a nice long piece there. Okay, zoom in a bit there. And again, I'm going to now add my height in, which is 40. Okay. Very much like the finger joint here, now I have to mark the joints on the ends. So I'll do it in the same way where I use my construction line tool, go up in multiples of 10. I've just done that in the wrong way, so let's zoom in a bit better so I can see it. That's better. Going up in multiples of 10, just going up from each line I've drawn. I only have to do it 3 times, of course, because the last line would bring us to the top of the piece of wood. And again, from the edge, I'll go 12 millimeters and zoom in and out to see it a bit better. Go 12 millimeters on that piece. And I'm going to do exactly the same process of drawing in some little boxes to show where I'm going to cut them out, making sure that they're now the opposite. So I took out the bottom and the second one up. So this time I need to take out this one here, second one, and the top one, doing the same on both ends. So second and the top one. While I'm down here, I may as well quickly get these ones out. So push-pull tool, 1 and 2. Remember, there's lots of ways you could do this. This is just one method. It's my personal preferred method, but you do what works for you. Knock that out. and knock that one out. Okay, rubbing out our construction lines that we don't need anymore. And I'll also group this quickly together. Okay, so we have our two pieces. As we've seen, let's lock these together. So we're going to use our move tool. I'll take this corner here to lock to this corner. So I'm just going to grab that and lock it together. You can see a nice joint happening there. And now essentially I just need to duplicate that. So let's start by taking a copy of the side piece and pasting one over here. And I'll take a quick copy of the handle and paste one down the end here a bit. And again, we'll just now go with our move tool and find some locking points. So let's take this bottom corner here and lock it to this corner here. Good. And zoom and rotate around a bit to find a nice angle. And I'm going to take that corner. Whoops, wrong piece. Try that again. Remember to always select your piece first before you try and move it, a different piece. So this angled piece, and knock it into there. And of course that end lines up down there. So we're looking pretty good. Last thing I have to do now is to put a base on it. So as we've seen in previous ones, we're just going to flip it over basically. And we're going to draw a nice big rectangle going from the corner of the piece here to the far corner over there. And we're then going to push and pull that down a bit. And it's going to be plywood again, so that's 3mm thick in our case. So we'll just type it in, and now we can see our base. We really should make that base into a group, and because it's going to be tricky to select, as we've done before as well, let's quickly hide each of these other pieces. So we'll hide the handles and the side pieces. That way we can now select that and easily turn it into a group. That way everything's nice and grouped. Let's bring them all back. Get your little eyeglasses. Bring everything back. And we now have our tray. So we have the nice finger joints accurately measured. We have a cutout piece that will be more than big enough to put our hand in to lift it up, still allowing our minimum amounts in any direction. Look, you might want to leave a bit more than 15 mils, but that is the minimum required. And we have our base. Okay. From here, of course, you could experiment with different handle shapes. You might want to experiment with colors to see how it might look. Markings and engravings on the board itself. Again, anything that you could do in this virtual space to try out before you actually go and use real materials. So there you go, nice and easy. It looks complicated, but it's really only a couple of pieces, and in essence, the handle and the sides are the same, just a bit different measurements. So it actually isn't all that complicated when we get down to it. Thanks for watching, and off you go and have a turn.